Lately, I've been getting a lot of comments like these. Hey Roxy, I've been riding for a few years, but now recently I started crashing a lot. Can you make a video about that? And another one is, hi Roxy, while I improved a lot in my first years of riding, now I seem to have hit a plateau. Can you help me overcome it? The short answer is yes, I can. And today I'm breaking down a coaching method that I developed after years of coaching with my colleague Bernie. And yep, it's a different approach. We haven't yet seen it, but I want to share it with you because it really helps riders clear technical sections with confidence. It helps them to finally let go of fear, and it helps them to improve continually and safely, especially at an advanced age. But here's your warning. If you keep making the mistakes I share in this video, you won't just stay the same. You may actually get worse without even realizing it. Here's how most mountain bikers train. They pick a goal, like for example, I want to jump that gap or I want to clear that specific section, and they go try it right there. Sounds kind of logical, right? But here's the problem. If you don't have the right technique, and if you keep trying right there, you'll keep repeating bad movement patterns over and over. You may still get through the section or somehow clear that jump, but by luck and not with skill. And here's an example that I see a lot as a full-time coach. A rider tries to clear a rock garden, for example, but their body position is, for example, too stiff, or they're grabbing the brakes, or they are just generally looking wrong. And they try a section several times, and then somehow, after a few tries, they make it through that section. Now, what do they think? Great, I did it. But in reality, they just ingrained terrible habits that'll limit them in the future. So when they do what mountain bikers usually do, which is increase the difficulty of the trails step by step, or they increase their riding speed with time. So when they take these habits to more complexity, that's when they crash. And this is why over the years of coaching in my Roxybike methodology, I've created two types of training. That is goal-oriented training on the one side and technique-oriented training on the other side. Goal-oriented training is what I just mentioned. It's simply sessioning until you clear a section. And technique-oriented training is analyzing the skills, aka the movement patterns you need, then practicing them safely with a specific goal at hand on how to do it, and then taking these to the trails. So let me break this down, or let me break down the difference for you with a specific example: the front wheel lift. Goal-oriented training would be, I place a stick on the ground and say, lift your front wheel over the stick.
What?
And if you keep trying, you will eventually clear it. You will succeed. So you've reached the goal. By the way, in general skill development, i.e. motor learning research and sports science, this approach is also called a constraints-led approach, which in short is CLA, and it's a coaching framework for skill acquisition that emphasizes self-organization and adaptability and movement exploration rather than the explicit step-by-step instruction. And it thus encourages the rider or the student to find their own solutions and to explore movement patterns that work for them. Goal-oriented training, or CLA, does work really well for some skills, and it is important to integrate sometimes, and is particularly effective for children or people with a great coordination, like people who've played multiple sports their entire life. But here's the risk. It also comes with many potential dangers, and especially for adult riders, and even more so for mountain bikers who are trying to develop skills in a high-risk environment, such as a steep technical trail or a jump. Why is that? Because, well, truly, how you learn matters. So let's come back to the front wheel lift. The way how you learn to lift the front wheel may not be the most efficient if you just do it with a goal-oriented fashion. It may not be controlled, it may not be safe, and you might, for example, rely on brute force. You may have a bad timing, you may have inefficient habits like lifting the front wheel too high, for example, or you may have techniques that don't transfer well to the trails. So the bottom line is, just because you got your wheel over the line, it doesn't mean you learn the skill in a way that's efficient, that's safe, or repeatable on the trail. And that's exactly why there's another way to train, and this is technique-oriented training. Instead of just aiming for the result, like getting your wheel over the line, you would be guided or instructed step by step on how to lift your front wheel properly. Explaining, for example, why this technique works, where you would use it on the trail, what common mistakes there are to avoid, and most importantly, you would get expert feedback on your execution, allowing you to refine your technique over time until it's effortless, until it's consistent and safe. So bringing this back to the on-trail example mentioned at the beginning of this video, goal-oriented training is simply attempting an obstacle or a section on the trail until you clear it. And technique-oriented training is focusing on a specific form that'll keep you safe and efficient in the long run. So goal-oriented training is just somehow getting down it, kind of surviving the trail, no matter with which form. And technique-oriented training is focusing on specifically advantageous forms of execution. So while goal-oriented training gets you results, without proper technique, they may be short-term results. So you may be reinforcing inefficient or risky habits. And that's honestly what a lot of people do. And these two comments I mentioned at the beginning, they're probably because they've been doing mostly goal-oriented training. And technique-oriented may be a little slower in the beginning, but specific training ensures you build precision and control, making every movement more effective and trail ready. So let us just show you the difference on this roll down here. Goal-oriented would be, for example, doing this. A common approach in goal-oriented training is that riders will look at a section like this one and they will see other riders ride it, and then they will say, okay, I'll just follow their line, follow their speed, and then I'll get down. So Bernie will show us now the most typical errors riders commit when they're, let's call it, stuck in purely goal-oriented training. What he's gonna do now is he's gonna ride in, and then he's gonna reduce the speed before the roll down, and then he's just gonna open the brakes completely over the two roll downs. Ride the two roll downs and then ride straight ahead, all good. However, what we're going to simulate now is put down this kind of rope, and this rope is simulating a left-hand turn right after the roll down. And if he takes that habit, which is opening the brakes always on the roll down, and now there's a corner or a tight turn afterwards, let's see what's going to happen then. So as you can see, I've put down the line, and this is his left-hand turn. And now, Bernie, let's see how that would feel for you if this were the case with a habit you've now formed through goal-oriented training. And exactly that would happen. He would have a huge skid and he wouldn't make the turn. Yeah, well, if we're in goal-oriented training, again, he would say, hey, master, I got through it.
I went off the cliff.
But he went off the cliff before. So this is a perfect example why goal-oriented training can form super limiting habits, and then people either start to crash more or they start to hit a plateau and say, that feels sketchy, I'm not going to ride that. But they form these habits way before it actually caused a problem. And that's why combining goal and technique-oriented training is the shortcut in the long run. So what would I do with a rider if he approached me and said, this is his plateau and he keeps going straight when he wants to take the turn? I would not train with him right here. I would practice the movement patterns he needs for them somewhere else in a safe environment where his brain actually has the capacity to concentrate on these skills and then combine them here. And that's what, of course, Bernie has been doing. He's been practicing braking, body positioning, roll downs in different situations at different speeds. And now he can combine it here. And the result, we're going to see it right now, is him approaching the goal with a technique oriented refinement, and then he can ride it in control. Let's see how that looks. So the key message right here on this section is, if we train only in a goal-oriented fashion, then we just learn one way of doing it. And this one way of doing it is very often very flawed or based on our compensatory movement patterns that we have as adults, because most of us, especially leisure riders, are limited in their movement in a way because we don't move as much anymore. So that's why when we're practicing only goal-oriented, like for example, letting go the brakes on a steep or on a roll down, then we'll have one tool to do things, one way of doing things. And if we practice in a technique-oriented way, we'll have several tools, like a hammer, a screwdriver, and an Allen key, and then we can take the correct tool for the specific work at hand. And that's why combining them is the key. So what's the key to true progress? And what's this about the Roxybike methodology? Well, my approach is a strategic balance of both. So if you want to fast track your progress, so if you want to take a shortcut the right way, as in not just an illusion of a shortcut by just training goal-oriented, instead of like struggling with trial and error, you can just follow my methodology, which you'll get right here and also down. It's a smart, proven blend of both goal-oriented and technique-oriented training. And also you can join my Skill Up Challenge. It starts on March 29th, where I also have a combination, and you'll find the link below. And of course, all my other skills courses where you can try and train with a step-by-step approach right on your doorstep. And it combines this constraints-led approach, the goal-oriented approach, with technique-focused training. And doing this together is what ensures safe, efficient, repeatable execution. So you progress faster with confidence, and at the same time, you're safer. So if you're thinking, I'll just attend a single-day skills clinic and my local club and I'll get all of that, well, I can assure you, you won't. Not because I think I'm like so amazing, it's just because it takes time. A single-day clinic completely dismisses how our brain and body learn. It's basically like attending a single Spanish class, learning how to order food at a restaurant, and then flying to Spain and expecting to hold a heated debate about politics in Spanish. Not like I really want to talk about politics nowadays, but the point is, I think you get my point, that it's pretty unrealistic. And just like language skills, mountain bike skills require consistent, structured practice to truly stick. Without repetition and refinement, without practice, you'll forget the technique or execute it incorrectly when it really matters. Just like freezing up in a conversation because you never actually practiced speaking Spanish in real-life situations. And that's why, without technique-oriented training, goal-oriented training, or just riding usually leads to ingrained mistakes. And that's the answer to the first two questions that I got at the beginning. You start crashing a lot and don't know why, or you just plateau and don't know why. Because you've been mostly doing just goal-oriented training or just riding. So what does this mean for your riding? Example. Instead of just attempting a jump 50 times, I have a really practical example for you here. First, I'd recommend you to practice body positioning, proper braking, a variety of wheel lifts in a safe space, and that's an area without a jump, to concentrate on how you do the movement. In this phase, you will commit errors. It's normal. Errors are that part of learning, but since you're in a safe learning zone, these errors do not hurt. Step 2 is then, once you understand and execute the movements, you then refine it through controlled drills and progressive obstacles in a still relatively safe environment. And here's again a practical example. Instead of launching off a jump right away, you could start with bump jumping on flat ground. This creates a low risk, super high reward environment where you refine your lift-off mechanics without the fear of crashing, which means you build confidence and technique before adding more height, consequence, or speed. And in this phase, that ensures that your movement patterns become more precise, repeatable, and consistent before adding risk. Step 3 is, once you've built that consistency, and yes, this takes time depending on the complexity of the skill, and it certainly takes time for jumping, only then do you take it to the real trail or jump. At this point, you have the control and confidence to execute the movement properly, reducing the risk of injury and ensuring that you're truly progressing, not just surviving. So what's the key takeaway here, Roxy? Well, if you skip steps and if you go straight to the jump or straight to the gnar, especially as an adult, you're probably not training. You're just gambling with your progress and safety, and probably while you think you're taking a shortcut, you're actually taking the long road, because every seemingly good attempt very often reinforces bad habits and increases your risk of injury down the road and makes it even harder to correct your mistakes later. And every fail can be potentially dangerous, which is why it's important to practice in a safe environment. So if you've been stuck in purely goal-oriented training and you're ready to actually improve, then this is how you can fix it. So if you're serious about improving, my Skill Up program is designed exactly for riders like you who want to stop guessing and start riding with confidence by practicing safely. Check it out in the description below and right here. Now I want to hear from you. How do you like the two elements of my methodology? Have you ever thought about goal versus technique-oriented training? And have you perhaps been stuck in goal-oriented training? Share with me below. Thanks for staying till the end. Much love.